why did it matter that these men were or were not helping me redecorate the stage? Why did it matter what the men were doing? Because Tom's never cared what the men of the church were doing up to this point. It's never mattered to him. So why does it matter now?
I'll give you 3 guesses. Tom just got accused of not having any accountability.
And no one knows how the money is spent except for Tom. So how do we fix that?
Faith can feel like hearts and butterflies until someone lights a match and burns it all to the ground. Welcome to the Burning Butterflies podcast.
The sad thing is that there's abuse of every kind within the church. But the spiritual abuse is the stuff that just
It's a place there shouldn't be abuse. Like, there just shouldn't be abuse in a place that claims to.
Well, it ruins your soul. If you're new here, we suggest listening to our prologue episode first. This is the story of 2 women's journey through toxic church culture and spiritual abuse, all while finding healing in the end.
Sometimes it's just the facts, and if you get offended by it, that's a you issue. And if we can't be mature enough to have these conversations, even if some of the topics are difficult, then shame on us.
Now, this is going, if you have any sort of experience in church leadership, in a normal, everyday, I'm inclined to say the word healthy, but I know that's very few and far between, but like a normal, healthy church, we are going to tell this story and you are going to think that we are batshit crazy and that we don't know what we're talking about. So I want to refer you over to our Patreon. We do discuss in chapter 5, we talk about things that we have discovered about the leadership of this church. And so if you want the full breakdown of that, of how we discovered it and all of those things. But essentially, we have come to the realization now that Tom owns the church. Like, we were told all these years, you can vote Tom out as the pastor. You hold all the power as the church body, and I have to honor God, or you can just vote me out. Yeah, we could have voted him out as the teaching pastor, but he would have always had control. According to the way the church is set up, he has full control, no one else, over the finances, over the structure, over the rulemaking of the church. So, when these people go to stage a coup, they very well could have discovered the same thing we did, or they could have just decided, you know what, this guy is off his rocker and there's nothing that we're going to say that's ever going to change his mind, so we're just going to dust our feet and walk away. No matter what conclusion they came to, they left. But this shook Tom enough to feel like, okay, we need to have elders. I personally think it was because he never wanted to have to answer those questions again. And so he wanted a scapegoat to point to and be like, well, I have elders, look at these guys.
Exactly, because he did everything like in defense mode, and it's like, it's funny because he's like, okay, so these, 3 or 4 families left the church, and they're going to tell 3 or 4 friends, and they're going to tell 3 or 4 friends, and if anybody looks at us, we have to have this in place so we can say exactly that. I was just thinking that. No, we have that structure. And he thinks that that's going to deflect everybody from being, yeah, but when they were there wasn't. Like, it's totally, that is like a play out of his playbook. this came up, and the way I remedy is make it
Yes.
happen now and pretend like it's always been there.
So, I mean, we are moving fast. We are moving so fast. We are like in the beginning of February. Now, keep in mind, the banquet was the third week of January. So, we have had a banquet. We've had some people try to stage a coup, get mad and leave, and I get to redecorate the stage, and we're still only in the first week of February. Like,
moving fast. Let's go.
this isn't a slow burn
Life
situation.
in the fast.
This is a knee-jerk reaction. At the beginning of February, Tom starts asking people questions. What men do you see as leaders in our church? Were you guys getting those questions, whether either like on the worship team
No.
or like at
No.
home? Really?
Yeah, I mean, like,
That's interesting.
until it makes total sense, because later on, like when it all, because like until it came out publicly, we didn't know about it. I'm just gonna say that, and I'll tell you the reason. I can either tell you now, I can tell you later, but I'll tell you, it wasn't until it was made public to the entire church that Froggy and I found out about it.
Oh. Because it seemed like everything that I was involved with Tom in, he was asking people. Bible studies, meetings. He was on the phone with people. He was, hey, who leads this ministry? What's their phone number? And, all of this stuff. And he was constantly talking to people about who are these leaders? Because now we have to have elders. So he puts together a group, and it's not a big group. He has a couple of older guys that serve, all the time, doing everything. Bill Nye the Color Guy, because, people have been talking about Bill Nye the Color Guy being a pastor for years. Way back when, like, Old Reliable was made a pastor. People were talking about, I see Bill Nye the Color Guy as a pastor, right? So him, my husband Justin, Steve from like DJ and Steve. For some reason, he also chose Barry, who
Has been going to the church
has
all like
only been at the
two
church
breaths,
not even a year,
Yeah.
like not even a full year. He came the previous Easter, and so I think he kind of went through and was like, okay, what men are serving in more than one ministry? And he was left with like this handful of guys. And how Barry got his name on the list, I couldn't tell you.
because he
But I will tell you, when we had our first leadership meeting of 2020, Barry showed up. And all of us were very confused. And we assumed it was because he wanted to start a ministry. And so this was kind of like the steps that you took. You had to come and talk about it. But we never talked about the ministry that he wanted to start. And so, some people thought it was because, they're going to go to the Philippines and they're going to go on this missions trip, but he never even really talked about that at that meeting. He was just kind of there. And he just kind of sat in the corner quietly. So that was really weird that he showed up to this leadership meeting. But Tom picks these guys, and on Valentine's Day of 2020, they drive down to Denver because there is a man named Alexander Strauss. He has written some books about leading and church leadership and things like that. And he is speaking at this church in Denver. So they are going to go down, and Tom tells everyone they are going for eldership training. So as we have established, Tom half reads an email and thinks he knows what the rest of it's going to say. Tom thinks he is constantly the smartest human in any situation. And so if someone does try to explain something to him, he will like kind of blow them off and ignore them. If he thinks he's already right and he already knows what's going on, he'll just not listen. So no matter how this came about, they go down there and think they are getting eldership training. And essentially, it is a hype situation. Like, this guy gets up and gives like a, hey, you're men, be men, type of little speech. And then the rest of it is people getting up and hawking this guy's books. And he has a ton of books. So, because my husband went, he was like, it was just weird. He's like, it was a weird group of men. I don't really know why this group of men was who went. So it was a really weird grouping. And we didn't get training at all. We went and it was kind of like listening to like a 2-hour, like kind of like motivational speaker type thing. Just for Christian men. But we got these books. So they came back and everyone thought they had these books because they were chosen to go through this eldership program that this guy had, and they were going to do this. And so he gave them all of these books. The guy didn't give us the books. The church paid for the books. We are going to break down these books because, they are interesting over on our Patreon. But they have titles like Men and Women Equally Yet Different, a brief study of biblical passages on gender, a Christian leader's guide to leading with love, and Love or Die, Christ's wake-up call to the church. You have abandoned the love you had at first. Revelations 2:4. So, these are the books that the men come home with. And this is what they are expected to read these books on top of going through the eldership training book that they come home with. And so Tom bills it before they go that they're all going for eldership training. Then he comes back and he's like, oh, no, that's not what it was. I never said it was eldership training. Oh, yeah, you did, but okay. He's like, we went down there to vet it, to see like if this is what we want to do. And then I met the guy and we talked and it seemed like it was a good fit. So he just gave us all of the eldership stuff. He gave it to us. So he comes back and they have all these books and everything. But now he found out at this conference or training or whatever it is that they went to down in Denver, he discovered he really needs more men because this is a rigorous training. It's an intensive training. And this is really going to put the men through the ringer and really make them prove that they're men and good, godly Christian men and have the faith that our church needs to have the leaders that it needs. And so he needs to have more men because ultimately what he discovered was, I think the guy said something along the lines to him probably, or he saw it in the eldership book he got or whatever, that if you take 10 guys through, you'll be lucky to get 2 to finish at the end. So he decided he needed more men. So on February 17th, so remember, the beginning of February, we decide we have to have elders. February 14th, we find this guy, random guy, in Denver that we're going to go listen to him talk. And on February 17th, he sends out another wave of emails to men inviting them to join this. And so you have men like, I mean, obviously Old Reliable is going to be on that list. Like I said, Steve Brock from Brock and Barbacine is on this list. Barry. I don't know if Corey from Corey and Topanga I don't know if Corey got an invite or not. I would assume he would. Schroeder, Bill Nye the Color Guy, and Chimney are some of the men on this list that are going to go through this eldership training. And Tom starts talking about it publicly. So up to this point, like you kind of talked about, the choosing of the men, the going to Denver, all of that stuff, that was something that was discussed like openly in the office, but it was not something he talked about from stage.
I feel like he thought he was going to pick 7 guys, take them to Denver, train them up, and be like, look, we have 7 elders, and be happy.
I think so
that,
too.
right?
Yeah, 100%.
Like, and then I love, like, how he totally changed his story. Like, when they're like, that wasn't a training. And he's like, no, we were vetting the training. And we need to, like, like, you guys were on the, like, he pulled one out of Charlotte's playbook. Like, you guys were on the planning team. To plan for the planning team.
Yeah. As you can imagine, this hurts some feelings. This hurts some feelings for a couple of reasons. One, there are some women in the church who are dirty pissed off that it is all men that are being chosen for this role.
Yeah.
And 2, there are men in this church who are hurt that Tom did not see them as an option to be an elder.
Yeah. I know one of those
and
guys.
One of those men was his own son.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that for a minute.
Oh, this was a big, I think that they argued over this, like full blown out screaming matches with each other, like a couple different times over the phone, maybe even, I don't think in person. I think they were all over the phone, but yeah, I mean, there's 2 that I can definitely remember of just all out back and forth, like screaming matches with each other over why Froggy wasn't selected to be on the eldership team. And I'm just going to say that, like, man, you have people like Froggy and Brandy, they keep score. Like, when they're constantly the ones being compared to others and not given their due justice, and they're very black and white, and they keep records. Like, they got all the dirt on you. They do, because they're like, oh, I do that, and that disqualifies me, but you just did it 3 times, right? Like, they really keep tabs on all that. And so in those 2 conversations that I know of, it could have been a couple of more, but Froggy had all the dirt on these men. Oh, this guy's qualified but he does this, and this. But because I do this thing, I'm not qualified. Oh, this guy, this, and this. This guy, this, and this. Like, every single one of them.
Which is so funny, because, like, when Justin was first asked to be an elder, he said, I'm biblically unqualified. And Tom goes, well, what do you mean? And he goes, well, because I wasn't faithful to my wife. Right. Like, you know, way back, you know, when I told that story, like, Justin was like, I've disqualified myself. Like, according to scripture, these are the characteristics of, you know, it lays it out in scripture of what to look for in these men, and I disqualified myself. And Tom goes, well, God forgave you for that, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah. Yeah. You're good now.
So,
which that wasn't even like
God forgave.
Froggy's. That wasn't even, because with Tom, it's like, well, you smoke pot, and then it's like, yeah, well, Justin drinks beer, right? Right?
Yeah.
You know, like that was the only specific thing ever about Justin. But there's some of those other guys that are on the othership team that there's some things, you know, and like one of them, for example, one of them, nothing personally against him, but he's also in the same boat that Tom is, where it's like, you live this upright, outstanding life, but your children aren't, right? And so, like, one of the guys' kids are friends with Froggy and doing all the same thing Froggy's doing, right? And so, like, but yeah, I would be like, well, this guy did this and this guy did that, and so, but guess who ended up going and being invited after those conversations? Froggy.
Oh, did Froggy finally get invited?
Yeah.
Oh, good for Froggy.
I think he went to one or two of the things.
The meetings.
Yeah.
The trainings.
It didn't go well for him. He's just not a group meeting kind of guy.
I am. Yeah.
I've got stories about that too.
I'm curious about something.
Yeah.
I'm curious about something before we kind of go into like what these meetings look like. Because like people who are abusive and people who have, volatile personalities, if things don't go their way, they kind of tend to like go into two camps. They take it out on everyone around them, or they are so hyper focused on the person who is like the source of their anger that then it kind of gives everyone else a break from their anger. So I'm just curious, like what, when he was so mad at Tom for not letting him into that group, like what was that like in your home?
No, it's so funny because it could be either way with Froggy. And so, like, I would say when it came to those conversations with Tom, there wasn't an aftermath for us. Like, he was so hyper focused on that. It was an unleashing of, I mean, they would just go round and round. And this wasn't like the first time, but when they wouldn't see eye to eye, and Froggy felt justified and had enough ammo to go against his dad. Like, it definitely was that hyper focus and a reprieve for everybody else. But when he goes to the eldership meetings, and then it's a group of people, like that group of people would have become the whole target, and then they're the problem, right? So, yeah. But his relationship with his dad was just very unique like that. Like, I wouldn't say there was ever anybody else that could take the focus to give anybody else a reprieve.
Yeah. If it was anyone else, it probably would have been hell for you guys.
Like, he'd just be mad. And
because it was his
dad. If he
was
mad, if he was in a bad mood, like he was mad and in a bad mood, and then you never knew it was going to set him off. But it was like, I don't know if it was just like the venting at his dad and arguing with his dad, like unleashed so much that he didn't have anything for anybody. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it was just all directed.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, and that's something too, is because like Tom would match energy and he'd come at him just as hard.
Yeah.
And so, most people would have like, backed down or,
Yeah, but they'd go around and around and around.
Yeah. And Tom would engage in it. So, yeah, it's like a toddler who's worn himself out.
Yeah.
He doesn't have the energy to fight anymore because he.
Yeah, go take a nap afterwards and then I'm fine. Had a little snack. Yeah, that is exactly how that went down.
Okay, so let's talk about these meetings really quick. Because, so I've talked to Justin. We've talked to a couple of other gentlemen who were a part of this group early on. But essentially it was like they were supposed to go through a book, but it's just like everything, any other study that anyone ever tried to do with Tom, other than Master Life, any other study was you'd read a little bit and then Tom would go off on a tangent and that would take up all your time.
Yeah. And he'd either spend it correcting what was written in the book if he got to something, or or going on. Yeah.
I don't agree with this, so we're going to talk about this. And this is why I'm right. Yep. Yeah. But one of these books is the kind of, so he uses this book and he uses scripture. So he uses the Men and Women Equal Yet Different book. And he uses scripture. Because Becky, the lady who loves to share the gospel,
who has the Bible memorized like 10 ways to Sunday,
under all qualification, if you take, I'm gonna get a little like woke for you for a second, so just hang tight with me. If you take pronouns out of the description of what makes an elder in scripture, and you just look at the qualifications, Becky ran circles around 90% of these men. And I would dare to say Becky ran circles around Tom. And she was fired up that we were going to have elders and women were not being included. She was mad. And to her defense, we have not had any form of a board, of an eldership team, of, whatever you want to call them, deacons, whatever you want to say. We have not had any of that. We've had a quote-unquote leadership team. And it ebbs and flows as to who is a part of that team. But one of the most consistent people who has constantly been on that team, who will hold Tom accountable, who will walk into his office and keep him in check, has no problem going toe-to-toe with him, is Becky. And she came in the office and was so mad that women were not included. And she went round and round with Tom. She came out and she looks at me and she goes, "You are a leader in this church. You're a woman." And basically was like, "Hey, you're a woman who does a lot of stuff and you're a leader. You should be pissed off about this too. You should be just as mad as I am over this." And I had the audacity to look at this woman who, if we were to go toe-to-toe over scripture, she would kick my ass any day of the week. And I had the audacity to look this woman in the eye and tell her, women elders are not biblical. We need to submit to the authority of men. Even
Did you
after
choke on
all
those
the shit
words coming out of your mouth right now?
even after all the stuff I went through, the depression, the suicidal thoughts, all of this stuff I have gone through, I still looked that woman in the eye. It makes me sick to my stomach talking about it right now.
Yeah. But you know what though? You're not the only one. And
I'm not.
That's the garbage that's been, spewed. Like that's the lie. There it is.
Yep. Yeah. But she was so upset. Becky leaves the church,
Yep.
And ultimately Corey and Topanga leave the church. So, like we said, Charlotte told me if you and Justin or Corey and Topanga ever left the church, Tom would really have to look at himself and consider retiring.
Yeah.
Well, Corey and Topanga just left, and not a word was spoken of Tom's retirement.
Yeah.
Not a word.
Burning Butterflies is a listener-supported podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by our amazing supporters on Patreon.
Follow the link in our show notes to learn how you can become a Patreon supporter too. Supporters get exclusive access to bonus content each month, including outtakes, cut content, and supporter-only episodes. If you've enjoyed this episode, please leave us a rating on your listening platform.
Burning Butterflies is a production of Asha Media. Thank you for listening.